Thanks for staying with us. Moving on now to other topics. Now, the issue of severe flooding and destructive erosion has continued to ravage many parts of the country, and experts have linked this to man-made problems. Joining us on the show now is the town planner, Olutoyin Ayinde. Welcome to the show, sir, Mr. Olutoyin Ayinde.
Good morning, Morayo.
Yes.
Good morning, Tope, BC, and Miriam.
Oh, thank you very much.
You know, I watch you guys.
Oh, wow. Good to know that. All right, so when you travel out of the country and you're flying into a country, you see the beautiful landscape, the beautiful planning, and you're thinking, wow, this is a beautiful country, you know. And when you juxtapose that to in Nigeria, I mean, Abuja, fairly okay. You can see there's some kind of planning that happened in certain areas. But it's quite painful that other parts of this country, we didn't have proper planning. There are just houses everywhere, lights everywhere, scattered. How do we begin to, do we have to destroy all these houses to replan or to rebuild? Or how do we begin to fix a situation where there was no planning from the beginning in our country?
It all begins with good governance. You know, in those countries where you have mentioned, you will discover that planning answers to good governance. When government moves to governance, you know, you can be government and not deliver governance.
Absolutely.
For example, in UK, government establishes a public housing policy, and governance delivers that housing policy. And that's why you see that in every estate, the buildings are of the same shape, the same height, the same color. As you move from estate A to B, the building type may be different, but they will be of the same shape, the same height, the same color. And it's repeated over their cities. That's because governance has established a plan, and then town planning answers to it. So I tell people that it is the responsibility of government to plan, but it is the knowledge acquired by town planners to help government put those plans on paper. You know, you work from paper to reality. So to get things right in Nigeria, we really have to address our governance. Again, the governance system. Governance is supposed to take care of everybody. So when government takes care of everybody, you don't do self-help. Why you see different things in Nigeria, different heights, is that we do self-help. In UK, when you have accommodation problem, what works in your mind is, which apartment do I subscribe to? Is it the council flats? Is it the cooperative flats? Is it the private corporation flats? That's because governance has established it. But where there is none, you do self-help. So if all of us in Nigeria have accommodation problem, we all get our different plots. We all have our different briefs for our different architects. We all have different access to funds. So Tope builds 5 floors because she has the funds. BC decides to do 3 floors. And then I decide to do 7 floors. And Miriam does a bungalow. And then you do, so you have that staccato of heights. Justifying that Nigerian musician that sang Nigeria Jaga. So it's pointing to the fact that somewhere leadership has not been taken of the human community. And it is government's responsibility to take this ownership, because government has what you call the power of eminent domain. It's only government that can declare the whole of an area an acquisition for overriding public interest. And once they have declared that, they have that capacity to be able to plan, and then the town planners come.
Let me go on a very short break. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. So we're still with the town planner, Mr. Olutoyin Ayinde. Yes, Mariam.
Yes, sir. So you explained to us how we got here. You know, Mariah had previously asked, like, okay, now we know we're here. How do we get out of it? Especially now looking at how climate is forcing us to make a change, whether we like it or not.
We have to take some bold decisions. You know, someone said, no matter how far going you are into the bush, you know that it's the wrong direction. You have to come back. Personally, I always see Nigeria as a very big market for regeneration. You know why? we're developing, we're expanding, we're not relating it even to our land resources. And as population is increasing, our land remains the same. You know, there are countries like us that saw things like this before. Singapore many years ago was developing low level. And once the governance established that no Singaporean must be homeless, they discovered that those 2-floor, 3-floor buildings will not accommodate them. So they brought them down. In the first instance, they had 10-floor buildings. In the first instance. But in 2012, when I paid my second visit to Singapore, from a building, they were showing us the last set of 10-floor buildings that had not been demolished. Those ones that had been demolished, they had replaced them with 30, 40 floors of buildings, just to ensure they have more dwelling units. Wow. So I believe that when we are ready to take that bold decision, we'll begin to consolidate all these pieces of properties together. When I served the Babatunde Raji Fashola government between 2011 and 2015 as Commissioner of Fiscal Planning and Urban Development, we had a model like that in the Salegongon project, where about 11 plots were brought together. They were tiny plots in Lagos Island, but they were brought together, and in place of that, there was a 13-floor building that we put up, I think, with about 48 dwelling units. You know, so things like that over time will take place for us to take charge of our environment before it takes charge or destroys us.
Okay, so sir, it seems to me like the government is not even ready to take charge with all the issues it has. It has, the direction of the government is facing so many places at the same time, and we may likely wait for a very long time. In the interim, don't you think a private partnership would help to solve the problem? Don't you think the government can get into private partnership with individuals who would ordinarily have resorted to self-help to, you know, do something together that will benefit the people?
But let me say that some efforts had been made in the past. Some had partial success. Some failed. Because you find out sometimes that when government wants to do PPP, they bring in the private sector person. The private sector man is saying, give us the land document so that we can use it to access loans. And we have had a situation where they access the loan and then use it for another project. And then you want to stop them, they take you to court. And then you know what our justice system is. You continue to drag. But let me also say that it failed sometimes does not mean that we cannot rejig it. Because the truth is, if we do not replan all these things and rediscover ourselves, we either plan or we perish.
Plan or perish.
Okay, sir. The questions are similar, but different. I see this current administration doing a whole lot with real estate companies, but I play in the real estate sector, and I understand that every documentation, like real estate developers have been seen as a revenue-generating unit for the government, as opposed to a collaborating unit to help solve the problem the government have been unable to solve for several years. So it's not like there's any incentive for lands to develop. There's no incentives in terms of processing your documentation fast for developers. There's no incentive in terms of funds that will be accessible for you to do your development. What exactly would you propose is the best solution for the government to maximize the large number of entrepreneurs playing in the real estate industry?
You know, one of the things I think we must do is to have a dialogue. I think this thing has to be opened. The truth is, we don't even have that much land on which we're developing on. So we need to bring all of the players to realize that this is the amount of land. Of every amount of land that is available to any state or any nation, there is a portion of that land that is supposed to go for conservation that you will not develop at all.
Wow.
at all. Not recreational parks, conservation, because you can't develop all that you have. You can't. Then there are places for parks, for recreation. So at the end of the day, when we begin to look at this thing, we look at our population. Some projections are saying that in 15 years, Lagos will be about 40 million. So where would they be living? If we do not sit down and begin, look, even the real estate developers must begin to rethink the kind of plans that they are looking at. Maybe it will become a luxury for you to have a detached home. Maybe all of us have to live in apartments in order to be able to accommodate
As the president
ourselves.
of the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, I know that you're doing a state tour, and this is the 14th state you've been touring. What do you plan to achieve? What exactly is your objective for going around, and what do you hope to get from this tour that you're doing around?
Okay, the objective really is that we have found out that there's a whole lot of misconception about planning. Many people think that building plan approval is town planning or urban planning, but it is the downstream pedestrian product of planning. We've seen that what we do generally in Nigeria is that we develop before planning. But the sequence all over the world is that you plan first before you develop. It's just like the sequence between thinking and speaking, and you will understand that. You think first before you speak, and that's why the good book says, do you see a man who speaks without thinking? It says there is more hope for a fool than for him. So do you see a man developing without planning? Do you see a nation developing without planning? It can only end in chaos. And that's the truth. And I tell people, one of the things that makes it imperative for us to plan is an analogy of if you put a bone before a dog, you will have no problem. It will wag its tail and dance before you. If you put that same bone between two dogs, there will be a struggle, right? But put that bone in the middle of 50 dogs, what do you think will happen? They will leave the bone and fight themselves to finish. Call that bone the land resources of Nigeria.
So that's the Nigerian story.
Call that bone the Nigerian land or our territory. In 1971, my tutor told me in Form 1 that Nigeria was 56 million. This is 50 years after 1971. We don't have the same land that we had then because Cameroon took Bakassi away from us. But you know what? Projection says that we are over 211 million. In a few years' time, we'll be 300, we'll be 400 on the same land. So if we do not plan these resources, we're finished. What other nations do? There's no nation that can expand its territory. So what they do to manage that limited land resource is to plan it. So we must come down and plan.
All right, sir, some people will be listening to you and be like, in the north, there's just expanse of land, just free land, nobody living there, just bushes and forests. Why should this be our problem as Nigerians?
There's land.
We'll just ship people, you know, from these congested areas to where there's free land. As a town planner, what is the response?
Are you aware that as a nation, let's not even say state, as a nation we need land for agriculture? So even those lands that people are talking about, when we ship them there, you'll be encroaching on land for agriculture. And anywhere you build, you can't plant there again. And the moment you are doing that, it means that you are increasing food security problems, right? So it's a balance. We have to, and that's why planning comes from studying. I don't know if I've told you about Socrates. Socrates lived between 470 and 399 BC. And he said, by far the greatest and most admirable form of wisdom is that needed to plan and beautify cities and human communities.
Let me come to you for a second, sir, because I know that the Honorable Minister Fashola had said that he complained that we don't have a housing problem because there are houses. People just choose not to go and live them. So, for example, you drive to certain areas and you see this huge development that they've done. People refuse to go there possibly because they didn't plan. That place is not residential enough. It's far from the cities. So my question, therefore, to you is that what precedes? What's the planning that precedes developing an estate, for example? Is it that you ensure that the malls are there, the roads are there? What exactly do you do? Because people just choose not to go to those places.
Sir, but Maria, I need to just address it because that issue, when we raised it, people came for me that I did not take the part of real estate developers, what we should say. Because when the minister was talking about housing deficit not being the number it is, developers are saying that the reason we have housing deficit is not that there are no houses. It is that you can live in Nigeria for 20 years, work hard for 20 years, and be a tenant for 20 years. There's no plan towards home ownership. The government, the housing deficit is that you will be a renter, you will rent house all your life. You don't own. There is no policy to ensure you own. That is the one that we need the minister to deal with. But the question she asked, which is, what are the infrastructure that should be on ground to ensure that the empty houses built in some locations get occupied?
Now, you see, apart from infrastructure, you find that in some places there are infrastructure, but people are just not there. The question is, who did those people build for?
Thank you.
Before you build, you're supposed to conduct some surveys.
I agree.
To know those who need the houses. I was going through Abuja to my office, and I saw a lot of estates. I was asking myself, so where are the poor people going to live here? So, yeah, they will be there for the high class. But what of the low cost?
How many high class do we have?
So, before estates are put up, it's good to investigate, to find out. And like somebody said, part of this, my nationwide tour, I met with a traditional ruler who said that our planning is elitist. And I agree with him. Because we do a lot of GRAs. And I think we borrowed it from the British. When the British came here, they planned only the areas where they were living. They wanted to stay. Thank you. So we became GRA. And when our brothers took over.
Me too. So, sir, it boils down to the fact that the government is not paying attention to the people they are meant to serve. So in their minds, they are preferring solutions that suit them and not solutions suitable to the people that they are serving. But, you know, I wanted to ask you, how do you think this consolidation will work? And some of the conversations we need to start having with government now on how we can manage the little land we have, you know, when you compare to the population we are going to have. So I know that in other countries, they have very high-rise buildings. Now, how do we get people to say, okay, we can come together and, you know, merge something and have these high-rise buildings that would cater to people? Is this something we should be looking at? And when they approach you as a landowner, as a landlord or whatever, how do you, what do you bring to the table? How do you understand it?
No, it's been done before. Okay. That's why I said it happened in Isale Gongon during the Fashola administration. And it can still happen again. It all begins with dialogue, by approaching people. You know, before you take away something from someone, you must show him what you have in return. And that's what I think is lacking in most of our plans. So we must be able, and I think government can take leadership in this. Although, the truth, I heard you say in one of your in the earlier program that people don't trust government. I remember somebody saying that to us when we wanted to work on the Adeniji Adele scheme. They said, Your Excellency, sir, we don't trust government. So government must also look for those people, those leaders in the society, not necessarily government people, that people trust. And those are the people that must first start these discussions and negotiate and make the conversation, and then we can all have the round table.
We're actually supposed to talk about flooding, but we didn't even touch on flooding at all. And I believe strongly that beyond talking about all of this is that, sir, you are in government. You are the president, national president of town planners. I think the biggest thing we need is a vision of how our layout is going to be. What would you say is being done to help? Because I see flooding that take place. There are a lot of flooding reported in Oyo, and when I drive through Oyo, I see the houses being built. Like, the houses are built, there's no road, there's nothing in between them. And a lot of them are developed on an individual basis. How can we create a vision? What vision are you creating as a town planning national president for Nigeria?
Okay. Now, I don't need to create a vision for Nigeria. Nigeria should obey its own planning law. Nigeria promulgated a Nigerian urban and regional planning law in 1992. And it became a law of the Federation of Nigeria in 2004. The federal government is yet to implement that aspect that it's supposed to do. It prescribes that we're supposed to have a national physical plan. A national physical plan will have told us how our states connect, how the drainage systems in Nigeria. Look, God did not design anywhere to be flooding. There are valleys, there are streams, and all of these things are supposed to join and connect waterways. So from our national physical plan, then we'll go to the subnational, the geopolitical regions will have their plans, and then the states will have their own plans, regional plans, telling a state governor how all the communities in his state are located and how he can connect them. So we must obey these laws. And one of the reasons I'm traveling is to see which states have domesticated it or not, because states too are expected to domesticate. Well, Lagos is far ahead on that because it domesticated it many years ago. But some states are yet.
We have to wrap up, sir. Thank you so much for shedding light on this for us. We just continue to hope that there'll be some kind of sanction after you've gone around and seen those who have not domesticated, because it's important. It's one thing to check, another thing that nothing happens.
We'll come back to the media.
That's all we can take on the show today. Hope you learned a few things as we have. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.